polarization. One of the hallmarks of manipulation campaigns is polarization. The polarization tends to happen in various ways. What I mean by polarization is to remove the middle ground in things and push things to extremes. A common aspect of that is if you aren't on this side, you must be on the other side. If you don't agree with this, you must totally disagree with it. In other words, you must agree with the opposite argument. Or if you aren't in our group, you're with the other group. And so this can lead to what we call tribalism, and it's part of the divide and separate methodology of the manipulator or propagandist. So we see it in politics, for instance. If you aren't right-wing, therefore you're left-wing. If you aren't left-wing, therefore you're right-wing. What it seeks to do, it seeks to negate objective people. Now, I suggest, I can't prove it to you, but I suggest most people are mostly objective, and the majority of people out there are not in extremes, but they're somewhere in the middle. They lean one way or the other, and probably quite reasonable people. But the manipulator tends to have to polarize them, to push them to one extreme or another, and negate objectivity. One of the purposes of polarization is to say you can't be somebody sitting in the middle saying, well, this doesn't seem right to me, I don't totally agree with it, or disagree with it, it just doesn't seem right to me. They then have to discredit that by saying you're only saying that because you're on the other side. So they push you to one side or the other. So that's one of the tactics of polarization. This negating objective people, negating people who are not adamantly one way or adamantly the other, or vehemently indoctrinated one way or vehemently indoctrinated the other, is to help their cause, because what they don't want is reasonable people taking an objective view of all the information. They want triggered people who become very polarized, very tribal, us and them, and that leads to help the exploitation, the triggering, and reinforce the fear and insecurity, which means the people can then be controlled. The other thing that happens with polarization is to make people heroes and villains. That leads to the same end, to get you absolutely against one person, absolutely for another. So again, it removes that there are certain people who are reasonable, have aspects that maybe you do like and aspects maybe you don't like, who most of the time tell the truth and most of the time are reasonable. It seeks to remove that. So it seeks to either praise them completely for everything they do and they're absolutely faultless, if part of their tactics are to get you to buy into the person. They are by definition faultless, they can't do anything wrong, or they're a total liar and everything they do is wrong. And that's why the anchors are used to help to force those extremes, so that we've used one example of an anchor, crooked, for instance. Even the most distrustful person in the world would likely not lie all the time. So what the manipulator can't risk is that you would discover that, and that you may start to see this person as somebody that has different aspects, and start to take a reasonable view on them. And the manipulator doesn't want that, so they have to push them into the either complete lying, untrustworthy manipulator character, or they're praiseworthy, some sort of savior, and that sort of thing. And a large number of these campaigns do aim to inverted commas, demonize somebody as well as praise somebody else. And I bet you can guess who the person is, or the group of people are, that are allegedly praiseworthy, and that is the people who are leading the campaign. So everything is polarized. Everything is extremes. There's very little middle ground. There's very little, well, this person tells the truth most of the time, but sometimes they don't. There's very little, this person is a reasonable person. It's liar or truthful, or hero or villain. The other thing which it works on, particularly we've seen this in social media recently, is people can say something's not true, does not mean they're lying. And the polarization is this person is lying. I may say things that I'm not aware that they're untrue, same as you. You might not be aware that they're untrue, doesn't mean you're lying. Intent to lie is intent to deceive, but what the polarization does is seek to pick on somebody who says something that's not true, but to use an anchor to say that is a deliberate lie. So there's in the world of polarization, in the manipulators' world of extreme polarization, there's us and them, there's absolute lie or absolute truth. And there's absolutely trustworthy person, absolutely untrustworthy person, and there's hero and villain. So it's very, very polarized in that way. And a lot of social archetypal stories have heroes and villains, and a lot of drama has heroes and villains. Our movies have heroes and villains, and our stories have heroes and villains. Kids' stories have heroes and villains. So it does play into a lot of social culture to polarize things in this way. It also helps create a sense of bonding within the group with this tribalism.